Page 7. An unsurpassed, penetrating, and perfect Dharma is rarely met with, even in 100,000 million kalpas. Having it to see and listen to remember and accept, I vow to taste the truth of the Tathagata's words. I think on the left side of your folder, there's a handout that's titled Chiyono's No Water, No Moon. That's what we're going to be talking about. Okay, I'm on. I'm admittedly nervous and excited, and I don't know which is like, it's just all happening. I'm very honored. It's really fun to be sitting next to my teacher. I thought we would start by reading the story, kind of like we did yesterday, and I have pre-enlisted Liz as my co-actor here, actress. She did a really great job in auditions, and so congratulations. So I'll read, and then I will read the parts of Chiyono. We haven't practiced, we haven't rehearsed though, so and if you could read the parts of the wise man.
Me?
No. So here's the story. Chiyono was a servant in a Zen convent who wanted to practice zazen. One day she approached an elderly nun and said, I am of humble birth. I can't read or write and must work all the time. Is there any possibility that I could attain the way of Buddha, even though I have no skills?
And the nun answered her, this is wonderful, my dear. In Buddhism, there are no distinctions between people. There is only this. Each person must hold fast to the desire to awaken and cultivate a heart of great compassion. People are complete as they are. If you don't fall into delusive thoughts, there is no Buddha and no sentient being. There is only one complete nature. If you want to know your true nature, you need to turn toward the source of your delusive thoughts. This is called zazen.
Chiyono said with happiness, with this practice as my companion, I have only to go about my daily life, practicing day and night. After months of wholehearted practice, she went out on a full moon night to draw some water from the well. The bottom of her old bucket, held together by bamboo strips and many other forms of adornment and, this and that, suddenly gave way, and the reflection of the moon vanished in the water. When she saw this, she attained great realization. Her enlightenment poem was this: with this and that, I tried to keep the bucket together, and then the bottom fell out. Where water does not collect, the moon does not dwell. So there's a lot, and you're gonna learn a couple of things about me if you don't know this already. I am a person who is very verbal. I do like words. I also like spontaneity and just trusting myself as vulnerable as it is. So I have a few prepared kinds of like reflections that and then I have some props and things to probably be in our bodies and experiences with our hands and our emotions and our senses and all of that. So, and I'm just like really kind of making this up as I go. So thank you for your gracious space and compassion. So this is my bucket, and it is adorned with all of my thises and that's. With this and that, I've held my bucket together, or tried. And right away there's tears, so I'm just noticing that. That part is very relatable for me. All the thises and the that's. And so last night in my, I don't know, final, how is this coming together moments?
Preparation,
non-preparation of like, here I am in the process. Not ironically, because I really like pretty things and items and like, I don't know, stuff with color and touch. And, I had these little ribbons and clips and doodads, and I thought, well, this is going to represent some of the ways that I have tried to keep my bucket together. Some are very sparkly and beautiful. Some are very kind of like severe and harsh and kind of even like painful. So I thought I would first pass my bucket around and just notice it, see what might arise with regards to your bucket or buckets. And if you don't know what the heck this is all meaning yet, that's okay, because I don't necessarily know either, but we're gonna get there. It's a koan, which is fun. I love it. And the more I spend time with it, the more like it like keeps expanding, which is super fun. So with this and that, I tried to hold my bucket together. And I think for me, some of those things personally that represents certainly my delusions, certainly some of my stories, my habit patterns, my conditioning, and for better or for worse, those are things that have helped me get to where I am today. And so part of what I try to practice, and it's always a practice, is Flint shared this at the Open Door Retreat in spring, was to gaze upon it with kindness and remain still. So it's kind of like those are kind of all my parts, if you will, or all the strategies, all the projections, all the storyline, all the shit that I carry, and all the goodies that I carry too. And some have been really effective and some have been not so effective, short term, long term, all of that. So a couple examples: perfectionism, productivity, collapse. Oh yeah, you're on my, you like those? Yeah, lots of stories about how special I am, but in a way that is uniquely narcissistic, and I say that also with kind of as a description. My version of specialness is just how messed up I am. So it's not like I'm so special, I'm so great, although there are moments of like, oh, I sure know more than you do. Or I know the way to do this better than I am, you know. But in particular, one of my storylines has been my version of not enoughness is so unique that nobody could possibly understand. And if people really knew, oh my gosh, you know, I would be A, B, C, D, E, the list goes on all the way past C. Rejected, unliked, unlovable. When really those are things most often coming from myself. I thankfully haven't experienced a lot of that, but the fear is really there. And so I have a lot of ideas about what I need to do to hold my bucket together. And some of them have been very helpful. Like I went through graduate school and got a bunch of degrees and created a profession, and also burned out of that profession a couple of times, and I've had to step back. And those were opportunities to learn how to take care of myself in different ways.
Guess we're not going to have to ask the question why I gave this to you.
I'm curious what you think. So I thought, as you we're just looking at the bucket. If you wish, I have some extra ribbons because there's like a lot of ways we tend to mend our buckets. So as a person who's a touchy feely person, if you wish to take a little piece of ribbon to reflect on what are some of the ways that you have, what are your bamboo strips to get through life? What are the delusions that you hold? What are the stories that you tell? What are the judgments, the preferences, the conditioning, the things that your mind.
Your patterns.
What are the patterns?
What are your patterns?
Oh yeah, what are your patterns?
Your patterns and
it's different. Yeah, yeah. And it's kind of colorful. It's kind of frayed. It's like gazing upon it with kindness and remaining still, which I'm not, frankly, very good at most of the time. But then in some moments, I'm like, oh yeah, I don't have to stay in the story. And certainly all of you help me with that, and this practice helps me with that. So this idea of the moon and the reflection of the moon, I'm kind of working in my brain both very literally and also metaphorically, which I think is the beauty of koans. And for me, the moon, is always such a resource, and she is just my goddess. Yummy, yummy. I don't sleep on full moon nights most of the time, and I bow to her, and I just. So when Flint suggested this as my koan, I was like, he must know that I like the moon. Which I really do. And I've been learning a little bit about the moon. I mean, I don't know. This is going to sound really naive, perhaps. I didn't know if people across the world saw this. If for some reason, some people the moon was full, and for other people the moon was half full. We have different seasons or different hemispheres and stuff. So I learned that everybody in the whole world sees the same moon, which is really pretty cool to me. That depending on the hemisphere, their place in the world, they might see it in a different location or a different piece of it, right? But it's always the same moon. And as you all know, the moon has its phases. Bear with me. So at times it's shining a lot of light, right? It's reflecting the full brilliance of the sun, of the light that's inherently in us. At times we are really full and we're really full of life. And other times, there's less of that. We see just a sliver, or we share just a sliver of ourselves. Or there's times of darkness, like those new moons when there's literally, it's there, right? But it's hard to see the light. And there's times of suffering and struggle and heartache and shame and grief and all the things. And there's also possibility in there, which I think is so lovely. So I like the metaphor of the moon being a reflection of our true nature, our Buddha nature, our clear mind, our light, and the organicity of the moon's phases and our phases, and the way that sometimes maybe we feel or we see other people's light or darkness to varying degrees, and yet it's something that we all share. So we can.
It's a great image what you're talking about in terms of what we share sometimes. A lot of us, and sometimes not very much of us, show it. but it's always there.
It's
The
always
moon is always
there.
complete,
Yeah,
you know, and
Yeah.
the light is always full too.
yeah,
It's just how is it being?
yeah.
It's a really
And then of course there's like those really special full moons that are like harvest moon, that's like orange, really, you know, oh, yummy. So we can pass that if, again, I'm a really hands-on person, if you wanna hear the jingle. So I was also reflecting then, of course, on the water. The water spills and the moon is no longer reflected. And I couldn't bring could have brought a bucket of water and like poured it all over our feet.
Thank you for that.
I didn't want to get too Jesus-y either, you know. So like I brought a mirror to symbolize and actually show reflection. And so my invitation, I'll pass around this mirror, is to notice what you see. Notice what shows up. And invite the consideration of, is there a difference between what's there in the reflection versus what's here?
It touches on that piece I was offering about self-acceptance too, which, you know, you look just like, oh.
Yeah, yeah. And one side of this mirror is like a very zoomed in version. It's great for like super analyzing your skin and like noticing how many wrinkles.
Yeah. And so when it comes around to Katie, it's at sort of the end, put it on the altar. So that when you look at the altar, you see Buddha, but you also see Buddha.
So right in front of the Buddha?
Just put it over there by the flowers, it'll be good. Yeah, but it would. We don't have much room.
And I like to also think of this idea of like, you probably have all been to like a carnival where there's a funhouse mirror, and the way that what we see is distorted, and yet it's like, it's still a reflection of us, but is it really us? And like, wow, ooh, the distortions that I have regularly, or the judgments that
It's
I
not
make.
a fun house.
No, it's not. It's kind of crazy making, right? And I say this with a lot of humility, like I kind of laugh about it, but also like it's a place of a lot of pain that I know I carry, a lot of shame. I mean, shame is one of my constant companions that I try to make space for, but also like invite to teach me or so as you see this mirror and you see this reflection, like what do you see? And is it this? Is it not? So then
There's that old thing which all of you heard, I know, that the truth is we don't ever see our face.
Mm-hmm.
You can't see your own face. You see reflections of pictures of it, but you can't actually see your face. It's kind of an interesting Koan in itself. Is like, what's that?
Yeah.
Do we really know? And so one of the ways that we see ourselves is the reflections we get all the time.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, and that's a perfect segue, Flint.
Oh, thank you. I support your teaching.
That I at first when I was working with this Koan, I was finding like, oh, so the reflection is bad. That's not the real thing. You know, the moon wasn't actually ever in the bucket. The moon is the moon, and like therefore that's what we should focus on. And then I was like, yeah, but there are reflections that help us see ourselves or turn back to our Buddha nature, or there's things that I keep this picture on my desk, and it's little Emily. Mm-hmm. I think I may be like 3 or 4 in this picture. This is me at my nursery school. And this reflection of me in particular helps me be just a little bit kinder to myself. And to me, that's a really useful reflection. It's a very, it comes like, it brings me right to a tender place. And certainly that picture could be of any beloved or, you know, a meaningful place for them.
You can do anything with the bucket.
No.
You don't have to.
No, but you go ahead.
No, I think put it in the bucket. Oh. Leave those in. That's it. That's what we're paying. I like to do. He's gonna end up on the altar.
Okay.
Because that's how everything goes
That's
eventually.
true, that's true. Yeah. So sometimes it's a little image of a beloved. Sometimes it's a flower, or I like the smell of this one. Of course, it's beautiful in my mind. Maybe it's a piece of your favorite hot tea, or it's, the sound of husband singing a song he made up. That happens. Or maybe it's art. It's a piece of art that inspired you, or that flowed from your I don't know, your being. And also, yeah, with the altar, right? Like we see images of Buddha himself, herself, themselves, which is us. And so I know when I first started kind of learning about and studying Buddhism, my mom was like a little freaked out. I grew up Catholic, like these like Buddha statues, like, are you like worshiping a false god kind of thing? I was like, I don't know, am I? Like, she's like, who was Buddha?
Worshipping idols.
Yeah, yeah. And so it's been so helpful over the practice and learning to understand more that it's not about that, and that's part of what really draws me to Zen and draws me to Buddhism. And so I'm also like, I love Kuan Yin, especially after being at the Hui and doing the canon chant, and yeah, that's a new Kuan Yin. This nice special, I don't know, splurge. Kuan Yin, especially it can be embodied in various genders, but especially embodied in the feminine, I personally appreciate. So we see these other reflections of ourselves, or we can see them if our eyes are open, if we're awake. And then I loved Flint's description yesterday about, it's all one light, and the precepts, I don't remember exactly how you said it, but the precepts are just various different reflections of that light. And as I think about receiving Jukai and continuing this practice, with a prism too, it depends on the time of day, like what it's reflecting, how much light's coming through, what the colors are.
This reminds me of Tozan's famous thing in Soto Zen, the song of the jewel mirror samadhi. Made me always think it was like a disco ball. But yeah. Put it across the front of the office. Well down,
So I appreciate the metaphors.
Put it behind the incense and it'll hold it.
Yeah.
Right there you go.
Yeah, that's like all our phases of everything. So I also a couple of thoughts, and then I'll look at my actual notes. The nun says something about there are no distinctions between us. Like there's not. I mean, Chiyono is doing this and that to try to keep her bucket together, but the nun is saying there aren't these special, amazing, uber great people that get to achieve some awakening, and then others who aren't worthy. Like you can be from any. All you need is your practice, and that is a good lesson for me. And I think over time I've evolved a little bit, and I still have a lot of practice to do, but recognizing that it's the time on the cushion is one little snapshot, and Flint has often said our time on the cushion prepares us for the rest of our life, all the time off the cushion, and so I do genuinely feel, and it's notice, not all the time, but more often, oh, this is a practice opportunity, this is a practice opportunity, this is a practice opportunity. even planning this friggin' retreat. Oh my God, the practice opportunities abounded. You know, the more people, the more practice opportunities, which is this beautiful thing. And so like having it be so ordinary, me be so ordinary, and yet recognizing within each of us and every little thing, like the beautiful opportunity and the sacredness that's there.
Here's the one-liner. You know, I told you I was reading Bill Weissman's stuff. You've heard me say this. Here's his one-liner about that. He said, "Why would you turn a perfectly good practice opportunity into an ordinary event?"
Yeah,
Right?
yeah. So the Chiyono's line about with happiness, I can relate to that too. There's some relief, and like with this practice as my companion, I have only to go about my daily life practicing day and night. It's like, oh, like I don't have to read like all the books that CJ and Ryan read. I don't have to remember all the things that, you know, you said. I have to show up and then show up again, and I have to show up again. Or I don't have to. I get the opportunity to choose.
Well, what's the quote? What's the quote?
Persist with affectionate awareness.
Yeah. What you're saying.
Yeah.
It's interesting. When I was saying it, I said persist with affectionate persistence. Or no, presence. Presence. I don't know why I made it into that. Yeah, I loved it, but it kind of worked.
Yeah.
It's a different alliteration.
Yeah.
But you're saying, you're teaching that, but you're saying that's what you realized.
Yeah, and it's hard. It's really hard.
Well, and that's also why I included that self-acceptance as the important thing, and that's really the hardest thing to do. But without it, you're in your life. And that's what you're teaching really nicely.
Yeah. I had as you were reading that, I was kind of like gently trying to like get out of the moment, but like, okay, like my things come next, or time to offer something. And I thought the little song came to mind, like this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
Oh yeah.
Right?
I started inquiry one time with that.
That's so
It's
beautiful.
perfect. Yeah,
Well, you remember Blanche sang it? Remember?
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's like an epic video. of
One of her
Blanche.
last Dharma talks. She sang it.
Beautiful.
She was pretty old.
So moving. Oh my god.
Yeah, it's very tender to think like we sing that as kids. Why don't we like sing that as do you have anything you want to add right now or say?
Right now.
Okay. Are there any reflections before I move to my written reflections or whatever is showing up?
Put it in front of the incenser. Yeah, put it. Yeah, there you go.
Oh, it's like a little Buddha part within the big.
Just a little bit more to the right. So it lights up. No, but that's important, not just because I'm OCD. There's that, but it's because it's aligned with nature. So
I can't see it from this angle. Is it okay?
See what I mean? So when you look at the altar, you want it to be lined up because that's about your aligning yourself.
Okay.
Looks pretty good.
I have a question for you. I also try to hold my bucket together lots of strategic ways. I get so scared that the bottom will fall out. Can you advise me on how to be when my bottom of my bucket falls out? Just help my fear.
I mean, I think my invitation would be to be with it. First, what you said, be with your fear and not be with it alone. And that in of itself can transform it. And although I don't wish for my bucket to fall out or anyone else's, exactly, like those have been times in my life that, I mean, going through losing a pregnancy or being, you know, a separation or significant loss or, you know, struggling with overuse of alcohol or overworking or a collapse response of like, I just don't want to do life. Like those times of not feeling like the ground is beneath me actually help me find the ground beneath me, kind of like clear the unnecessary. And sometimes those are really hard decisions. Like I have to make a change. I need to leave my marriage, or I need to my last one.
That's where to find out.
That's like, and I mean, for me, yeah, it's like wrestle until like, oh, I'm tired of wrestling, or it's the wrestling's not working. And kind of surrendering, but without resigning. Like, oh, well, how do I surrender to this and be with it?
It
And
will fall apart.
yeah,
That's the thing.
exactly. Like
It's
so
not like
much of the
if.
time.
I'm 57, it's falling apart.
Yeah.
It helps me, and it just gave me the image of when the water falls out of the bucket's broken. The earth is still there, like there is just let it just go to that place, just drop to the mud.
Yeah.
Just be in the mud.
Yeah.
And that's the place to be in that moment.
In the mud, yeah.
Held by something else.
A bigger
Held by
bond.
something else, right? There's always something that holds us, and not alone, you know, whether it's other beings or the mud or
No mud, no lotus, right?
no lotus. That's right. Thank you.
Someplace that would be Trudy's point.
Was I
You know
what?
Trudy's point. You can read that.
I wasn't.
Oh,
But
can I? offer
please,
it? Just
yes.
I'm not trying to take your.
No, this is yay.
It's some of you know Trudy Johnson, who's the teacher in the UK. She wrote a poem about this. I'm going to read a tiny thing she wrote before because it kind of bridges. Okay.
Yeah, please.
She talks about all the things that Emily's talking about. And she said, I love the way that a koan can sit in the back burner part of your mind and how the different aspects of it can come forward. It was back there working, you know. What has most come forward to me is the effort she makes. The thing that Emily did here. The effort to achieve enlightenment, the effort to hold it ailing bucket together so you can keep carrying out her tasks. Her sincere effort released disillusionment and despair. A few kind words from a friend reinvigorated her. But it is in the ordinariness of her service, in the failing of the faithful vessel that is mended. It is letting go and breaking that allows her to see the true moon, which is and so she talks a little more about this. She said, it's in the failing, the breaking of the bucket that the moon is free to be fully seen. This is what I wrote as a response. Here's the point.
Can you increase your volume?
Yeah, this is what I wrote in response. She says, the moon in the bucket. The staves have broken. The precious ancient water bucket has broken. The one that I mended again and again because I couldn't let it go. All the work and time and effort and hope and prayer and desperation and trying so hard have failed. I tried to hold it all together. Glue, duct tape, spit, elbow grease, love, hate, prayer, despair, they all failed. I believed it had to hold forever. Hold together for pride, for ego, for necessity, for life, for death. Otherwise, everything would fall apart. It failed. It fell apart. The staves split and water spilled. It could hold the moon no more. In the failure came wholeness, the pure relief of failure. The moon now in the sky. And then she added one final line to me, and when she sent it to me, thank you for supporting me to fail.
What was the final line, Flint? I couldn't hear.
Thank you for supporting me to fail.
It makes me think of something else you often say, which is we try and we try and we fail and then we go deeper.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big Hiroshi line. And then a couple of years later, she was still asking me the same question, Chris. Like you're asking? And so this is the poem that she sent me after her practice discussion. We did it again. It's called I Started Looking for the Moon Again. I started looking for the moon in a bucket again. I had for a while fallen into its true place. It had for a while fallen into its true place in the heavens, but now the sweet relief of failure is itself failing. Yielding to a deep, pinching sorrow. The sky is dark, no fingernail moon. To shift its way across the stars, searching in a puddle, I can't lift myself to look at the rightful place. Waiting, eyes down, for a glimmer of returning light and leaning into the embrace of others, suggested, who know the moon's true trajectory, being held while I wait to find the moon in the sky again. Exactly what you were doing. Mike.
So my reaction to it is kind of connected to that phrase, leaning into the embrace of others. Because when the bottom's fallen out of my bucket, I got a whole new perspective. Because people would come and offer me water. And that was a new view of the world.
This is why koans are interesting, because they are bucket breaking things. They're things that mess up the way you've held everything together, which makes something new possible. That's the whole point. Really a great example. That was something now that is possible that wasn't possible before, because I had it down.
Is there any hope for people who, when their bucket breaks, walk away from the bucket forever?
Of course, there are many responses. There's not one. There's no one right answer.
I know. I walk away from buckets all the time.
The only thing that would be interesting is if you walk away from them all the time, you need to look at anything you do all the time.
Yeah.
Because then it's a pattern.
No, not necessarily.
Yeah, just look, oh,
I find buckets all
that
the
seems to
time.
be a pattern that I tend to walk away.
Yeah.
Not to criticize yourself, just examine it.
I find new buckets all the time.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to decide whether or not sticking with the old buckets is really a good idea.
That's why it's a perfect koan for you, isn't it? Because there's no quick answer. You have to keep going deeper and deeper and deeper, not to find an answer, but to examine the territory, explore the territory.
Well, and the bucket is the relative work of the day in some ways. Not it, because there's an absolute, but we need buckets to do stuff. I mean, I gotta wash clothes and make the money and help my kid and the day, and so buckets aren't bad, I don't think.
Every conditioned phenomena is, by nature, will fall apart. Every conditioned thing, everything will fall apart.
So I love, Marla, I love that question, right? Because about, do I just walk, how do I know when to just walk away from that bucket? And so bringing up another childhood verse, right? There's a hole in my bucket, dear life. And so really that, like, I think I really got into that song when I was a kid, or my dad sang a lot. And it is like, well, you put gum on it, and then you, I don't know, you weld it, or you do all these things to it. Well, at what point, right? Does that bucket no longer serve us, right? I think that's what you're asking, and that's you started, this conversation that now I'm not going to get that song out of my mind, but it that is how I was really. That was a tenet that was really drilled into me. You fix it. It's broken, you fix it. Broken, it's fix it, right? And it's just like rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat. It's
Somewhere in between, I think, is in between pathological.
yeah,
healthy
right.
is the,
The more we focus on the bucket rather than the moon and the reflection and the water, the more we're going into just the psychological. Like there's something we can fix, and there are many things we can't, and that's great, and that's useful. But then we kind of turn away from the Dharma.
Yeah, I like that moon.
And to speak to that a little bit, I like the reflection that who is it? Merle Kodoboy's reflection from the in Lamb book. It's the very last paragraph that Flint included. Hers goes on a tiny bit further in the book, but she says, as Zen students, we live between Chiyono's first two lines and her second two lines, between keeping things from falling apart and letting them fall apart. Knowing how to keep things together is a valuable skill. It was knowing how to care for things that led Chiyono to continually patch a bucket. When it fell apart, she made excellent use of that circumstance as well. Our liberation deepens with the refinement of our capacity for flexibility and discernment. And so I also appreciate that's like, it's not either or, it's all of that.
Well, there's something too about the process of falling apart. Like it's always in process of falling apart.
That's all there is falling
That's
apart.
all there is the falling apart.
And back to the reflection, there's always what we would call ultimate reality, I guess, a little esoteric, and then the reflected light world of the everyday reality. And we live in that all the time, both because we're not so separate. And so the Koan is pointing to a way to have a different relationship, maybe a more awake relationship. And in the midst of it, we're coming and going. We're patching up and running away, breaking it, spilling, all that's happening. While ultimate reality is going along just fine. We don't break reality.
Emily, so the little pieces that you passed around, well, when you started to talk about the this is and that's on the bucket, it's like really hit me, and I think it's you made it very tactile. And there's something about that, I'm not sure. And it's like was saying the front and the back are different. They feel so different, but they're same thing. So something about the touch.
You were touched.
I was touched for sure. And the like things hands on my cheeks yesterday. I think it's part of me. I've done a lot with fabric in my life, early on and recently as well. And well, this was a joy to be part of for 2 years. With Marla, my sewing mate. And there were moments that were very integrating, like I know this one day I was cutting the fabric on the table. It was just a sense of peace. It was kind of strange. It must have been a part of childhood that maybe came back. But anyway, I just appreciated your think it. I think it's probably a part that's not so open with me. This love of touching and fabric, feeling. Thank you. Feeling. Thanks. Feeling touch. So thank you for that aspect.
Inquiry one time, I don't know, sometime in the last year or something, Flint said something about my version of it. I wrote it on my bulletin board, but like our job is to embody our practice and to practice our embodiment. And those are like two sides of the same coin.
And what our forms help us with.
Yeah, what our forms help us with. And oh, it's so hard sometimes, but I really appreciate your reflections. I think that's how I need to learn. It's a different kind of knowing than like highlighting a page in a book.
I mean, this is like a little Rorschach thing. It really is. Because, okay, here's what's presented. Here's this form, here's the face, the pattern. But you turn it over, that's all the stuff that went into making the pattern. But it looks completely different and it's softer and it's more open. All that stuff that went into it back there, into this kind of tight, pretty, consistent pattern. But back there, it's like, ooh, all this. Anyway, that was my projection.
I appreciate that piece too about the sort of multi-sensory invitation, because I think something you said was really, I wanted to get on a soapbox and be like, here, which was about just reading and thinking that Zen is somehow in there, And I think there's a preciousness about scholarly and academic and esoteric approaches that is cool, it's valuable, it's useful, but it's not the way necessarily. I mean, Zen is so living, so alive. And before we even had captured language.
That's what we started with, remember?
Yeah, like that's what's up, So I think it's important to acknowledge that's just as deep and powerful and profound as anything else, and it's always available. And I love that you brought in the experiential piece, because it just is a totally different language. It's like, and it invites such moving things like you just experienced, Rosemary. And so I just really cherish that you think that way and feel that way. And I want to like acknowledge that that's just as potent as, reading a fucking sutra. You know what I mean? It is. Or to you.
Well, it's really a reflection of the Koan and this person who works all day and asks, how do I practice? It's just through their day, and it's through, our senses. I mean, it's not everything, and it is.
It's interesting if you read the history of her and Chiyono and all. The history is kind of sketchy, but there are a bunch of them. So you don't know if she's a princess or if she's a street person or if she's this or she's that. It's like, so what it's saying is it's every person.
Yeah.
It doesn't actually, you can't put it in a box. She represents everyone. What else would you share?
Oh, thank you. There's a couple other, her enlightenment poem, I want to just reread it and continue to let it reverberate. And in some of my reading and reflections, I found a couple other kind of versions of her poem that I think, for me, it's useful to hear the same thing said in different ways. Or CJ yesterday at lunch maybe at lunch or sometime, talking about the value for you, I don't want to use your words exactly, but of reading different translations of these Buddhist texts, because there's choice that needs to be made, especially translating something from one language to another about like what they really meant or what the word is. And certainly these are things that are captured from, thousand plus whatever years ago.
We should say right.
Oh,
You knew how much.
what time do we end at?
11:30.
No, what time were we supposed to? 11:30, okay.
So it's
Zazen for 30 minutes.
10, it's 10
Oh,
to
okay,
11.
that's different than yesterday.
Okay.
We have plenty of time.
Okay,
Phew, I scared you unnecessarily.
Your book is.
My bad.
Yeah, my bucket is wrong.
Oh,
Now we're spacious.
Yay.
we have a, Ginny would like to make a,
Oh, go ahead.
1 second here.
I'm good.
Okay, there we go.
Thank you. You can hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Thank you. I wanted to first let you know that there's a sound like wind. I don't know if it's caused by movement, but if you all could speak up, and it just comes and goes, so it's not constant, but if you could all speak clearly and a little louder, that would be
That would
lovely.
be nice if we could, yes. We'll do our best.
And I'm at Appamada, I'm co-facilitating Women in Zen, which meets every Saturday morning. And we recently decided to start the Hidden Lamp, which is what it's the book the group started with, 10 years ago. And it's going to take us 2 years to get through it. And we've changed the practice entirely from reading to something really experiential and interactive and creative and embodied. And we just did this, Koan.
Oh.
And I felt like I really got it. And somehow today I'm like, wait, what? What's the bucket? What is the moon? Well, who is the moon? I mean, what is it that's lost? I mean, I just suddenly feel like, and what if you see 1,000 moons? How do you know which moon is the real moon? And what does it mean for it to be the real moon? And I guess it's kind of a nice state to be in because I really feel like I don't know any of it. Which is actually more interesting than getting it, quote unquote.
Your story has opened up for you.
It's like all this mystery, and my body is a bucket that keeps breaking down, and there's something really lovely about tending. The tending to the bucket can be done with a lot of love. It's, if you plant a garden, or if you raise a child, or if you take care of yourself because you want to be there for others, these kinds of, or tend to a loved one who is, needs to not be alone. And yet there is this other experience in my life of the bucket in that case was my entire life, and it fell apart into pieces. And so there was nothing to hold on to. And that was excruciating, but totally liberating. I mean, it expanded me into the entire universe. And it sort of knocked me out of all buckets. I felt like I'd been on the outside of a turning wheel. Things are great, not so great. Oh, it's really hard. Oh, it's getting better. Things are great. And then I was knocked into the center where all of those things are true all of the time. And there's just absolute stillness connected to allness. And I don't know how this fits in, but what you said about shame really touched me.
Well, you just alluded to it. Shame is about not fitting in, about being cut off. That you've not done something wrong, you're wrong. And it's a very painful one when all of us, have aspects of that. You're touching some of it now.
And it's exhausting also to try and hold the bucket together. Like when I lost everything, I had a moment where I felt like the energy of the universe was rushing through me like an electric river, and I could just let go. It was like I was thinking when you were telling the story that it's as if we're carrying this moon in a bucket and it's heavy. Then when the bucket falls apart, we realize we don't have to carry anything. The moon is up there. We can let go of everything. What's that?
Except you want to get some water sometime, you know, that is a function. But there's another poetic phrase from some of these old Chinese women, men, that says, let me see how I can remember it. One translation. The breeze flows freely through the empty hall.
Yeah. Yeah, I felt like all the obstacles were gone.
Yeah.
But it's also really intense to look directly at the moon. Sometimes, you know, its potency is immense. It doesn't seem to be sustainable. That's why we show up again every day, as you were saying, to do it again, to be present again.
That's the persistence.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm really glad we were working on this koan today. It's really lovely.
Thanks for letting us know. We can hold it with you. I'll give you another hint. This is for everybody, but in working with these kinds of stories, one of the things that's interesting is take the perspective of each thing in the story and tell the story again. Tell the story like you're the water. Tell the story like you're the moon. Tell the story like you're the reflection in the water. Tell the story like it, because we were hearing, you know, we think it's her and the bucket, and I think be the everything, and just see what happens.
That's brilliant.
That's very useful. Oh, Sally, yeah.
Sally is in Portland. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about the moon part, because I think we can get really focused on the bucket because it's so relatable. I mean, for me, it's like, my bucket, my ribbons, my whatever. And the moon, right, is like a really big part of it, and just one part of it. I like what you just shared about the invitation to, like, I don't know.
Identify with each part.
And so I wanted to read a couple other just the short pieces of just different words for the same koan. And then I tried to put into words my own. I was like, how am I going to talk about this? And so I tried to ask myself, like, what is this teaching about? What are the takeaways? How does it relate to my practice? Kind of like, how would I summarize this to try to, like,
Emily's teaching.
Yeah, okay. So the hidden lamp is where the koan is from that Flint mentioned, that you offered.
That's where it's
invited.
written
That's
down, so I pointed to it.
Yeah, that's the translation.
Oh, and there's
that
also, I don't know if you can see anything about this.
Oh yes, I love that.
Yeah, if you look online, there's this beautiful woodblock print. This is in black and white, but it's quite beautiful, which is a famous piece. You can find it online.
Yeah.
Forgive me if I missed it, but did you already share what the nature of the Hidden Lamp book is?
The Hidden Lamp is, it's the Hidden Lamp stories from 25 centuries of awakened women. So it's
Be a lamp, bring the light. These are the hidden lamp. The women.
The
lamps that were hidden.
Have either literally been excluded intentionally and written out of the histories, or simply weren't included for centuries.
And Peg at Alpamata has a story in there.
Yeah.
It's a significant book.
It's really yummy. So another book that I also used this when I was researching my ancestor at our Hui retreat. But so Women of the Way, Discovering 2,500 Years of Buddhist Wisdom. I really like this book because it kind of like gives a very like descriptive sensory story of Chiyono and her journey and all of that. And part of the and of the other ancestors that she talks about in here. Part of what's not totally captured in this version of the koan or the story is that Chiyono was apparently over time kind of discouraged about her practice, and she was the bucket carrier, the water carrier every day, and was kind of in this routine, and on one hand was relieved by being able to just do that and focus on that, and she was kind of mesmerized at times by the reflection of the moon in the bucket, but was also kind of discouraged over time by her practice. And so there was a pre-reflection that she, after one evening carrying the water back, giving it to the cook, she bowed and went to her room and wrote a poem. The bucket took the stream water and held it, and the reflection of the moon through the pines lodged there in purity. So this was her reflecting on the reflection of the moon.
Could you read that again, Emily?
Sure.
Please.
The bucket took the stream water and held it, and the reflection of the moon through the pines lodged there in purity.
Lodged there in purity.
Lodged there in purity.
The moon through the pines.
And then it speaks about this one evening when, the water spilled over the ground and so forth. And her poem, this version of it, so many ways I fixed the bucket. Its brace is weak and soon to break. Until one day the bottom fell out. Then there was no water in the bucket, no moon shining in the water. Different way to hear it. This is Grace's book, Zen Women, Beyond Tea Ladies. I love the title. Beyond Tea Ladies, Iron Maidens, and Macho Masters. This one also is.
I went to Japan with her when we were in the practice period, she and her husband, and she was definitely in charge. And she had the Rinzai teacher there also. She's in the Suzuki Roshi lineage, but she studied with the Rinzai teacher there in a place where women didn't normally go. And so Grace was kind of a badass.
So there's a little, like just a very short paragraph I'll read, and then her poem to express her enlightenment. So, experiencing oneness through Zen awakening, we finally realize our inherent relationship to the natural world and understand our uniquely human function in life. Our human function is to express and embody this oneness in everything we do. Our life, this human embodied oneness, is an expression of enlightenment symbolized by the moon. It is powerfully bright and reflected everywhere, but like the floating clouds, it moves on, peacefully changing form just as we do. Here's Mugai Nyode's, that was her Dharma name. Chiyono is her given name. Here's her Zango, her poem addressed to her teacher to express her enlightenment. Understanding nothing, I lost my way. And now I see I, too, am one with the moon on the water and the floating clouds. Understanding nothing, I lost my way. But now I see I, too, am one with the moon on the water and the floating clouds.
Did she end up being a leader?
She ended up being is, always will be friggin' amazing, but she was a huge leader. She also was excluded from the monastery for a lot of years because of her gender. And part of one of the stories that I read was that she, at some point, like shaved her head, got rid of her nice clothes, which basically was a way of like renouncing status, identity, all of that. And then she had tried to donate money to like be able to get her in to become part of this one of these monasteries, and it was turned down. And she took an iron and scalded her face as a way to demonstrate, I'm not here to distract the male monks with my beauty and my femininity. I'm here to practice. And that she was accepted into this particular monastery. I'm probably goofing up the story, but and there's lots of examples of female ancestors who cut off fingers, scarred their faces, burned themselves, like literally to demonstrate their sincerity to practice, and to, in so many ways, show that they weren't there to tempt anybody.
But there was one who did something special.
Oh, the one who went nude into the Zendo one
She
day.
took all her clothes off and
Yeah.
walked in and said, "Deal with it."
That wasn't this person,
That
but
wasn't
I respect her too, man. And so she went on then to also, like, I think start a convent and train, like, just dedicated to training women. Anyone who would come and seek the Dharma, she would meet with and have tea and welcome them. And I think became one of like 2 pretty primary Dharma heirs to her teacher. And she was like a really cool, big deal. So special and yet ordinary, so I tried to put into words my own, like, what is this all really about? So here's for what it's worth. Koan teaches us to let go of attachments and illusions. The moon symbolizes ultimate reality or enlightenment. The water represents the mind through which we perceive the world. When we stop clinging to fleeting thoughts and desires, the reflection in the water, we can directly experience true reality. It reminds us to see beyond appearances and embrace things as they are. And then I tried to also kind of like think about, I was trying to like write this in different ways, and some of these things, like, I didn't just like come up with this, like I listened to several podcasts, a super cool thing to find resources there's podcasts about lots of cool things like Zen Koan, or groups or study groups and things. And so I kind of asked the question of like, how does this koan relate or apply to my life and my practice? And some of the things that kind of came up was like letting go of expectations and attachments. I'm like dropping some of those like storylines. Seeing beyond appearances. Dealing with change and impermanence, like the buckets I was going to break. And then continuing the practice of like cultivating a clear mind and a consistent practice so that we can see the moon, not get stuck in the mental, emotional, psychological layers of like life and our, conditioning, and we can see the moon again or look for the moon again. I think actually looking for the moon, right, is like happens before seeing the moon.
Excuse me, Emily, could you repeat, you said, I just wanted to make note of your interpretations. You said the water could be the mind, right? And what else did you say?
So the moon being our brightness, our light, our enlightenment, like our true Dharma, our true Buddha nature. The water being the mind, and the reflection being all the ways that we get caught in our entanglements.
We become dazzled by
yeah.
our sensory world.
And the things that are like fleeting, our impulses, our thoughts, our desires, our urges, our preferences they change, like a reflection changes. And so the water's calm and maybe it's like nice and still, and the water's bumpy and there. And so, but that's like we can be caught in that, but to people to turn towards again and again our true nature, our awakened, the awakening in our light that's already there, that may at times be hidden, but that's, the moon is always actually full, right? It's just like, how much do you see? Are you looking? How much do you see?
And your nature is always complete.
Yeah.
how much do you realize, how much do you embody, how much can you express?
Yeah.
Emily, you've already been speaking to this really beautifully.
Make sure they can hear you.
You've already been speaking to this really beautifully, Emily. But I think you have something to teach us on one thing in particular, which was when she's after speaking with the wise nun, as she said, with happiness, with this practice as my companion, I have only to go about my daily life practicing day and night. And then it says, after months of wholehearted practice, she went out and this bucket bottom dropping happened. Not necessarily thinking of it as that it was the cause. It definitely happened before and was some way connected. But what's wholehearted? What does it mean to you, or what does it mean for us? Like what that wholeheartedness was in practice that she was engaging in.
In this moment, what that means to me, thank you for the question, because it could be different in 5 minutes, I don't know, but it goes back to what the nun said about holding fast to the desire to awaken and cultivate a heart of great compassion. Like that wholehearted being our intent, our calling, our longing, our humility, our desire to awaken, our desire to practice, and doing it really earnestly. I think without that effort to achieve, or actually I would say that differently, noticing the effort to achieve or acquire or get something or become something different, being responsive to our failings and our struggles, failings, and I don't know, it's kind of like the effort that counts, like
If you bring your whole heart,
yeah,
wholehearted, then what's the part that you leave behind?
yeah, and the wholehearted, whole-minded, whole-bodied, like it, bringing one's full self.
You mean like you've demonstrated?
Yes.
Yeah. You just didn't say some things. You got your whole self here.
I did.
Maybe I missed it, but you defined, or you told us what the moon, the water, and the reflection represented. Did you tell us what the bucket represents?
To me, the bucket, I don't know if this is right, because who knows, but the bucket represents the ways that our conditioning, our habit patterns, our delusions and stories, and in some ways ordinary life. I mean, the things that.
So what you just said, ordinary life, is what says spirituality to me, and the other thing sounded psychological. Because I always get accused of that by somebody.
Well, as what isn't a negative thing, it's just the way we can get caught in like coping.
Yeah.
It's different than what this practice is.
But the bucket, yeah.
And I also think about the bucket as our karma, our life experiences, our trauma histories, our relationships, the culture in which we live in, the world events have, like all the things that are practice opportunities that, like, you know, our ancestral, our lineage, our generational.
So us.
Gifts and
Yes.
yeah, like.
And we need to fall apart in order to be perhaps rebuilt.
Yeah, there's one translation or reflection, one of these things that I read or heard maybe in a podcast was, you're talking about like our body is made up of 90 whatever percent water. Like we are the buckets, or we could be the buckets. And I think it's any and all of that. Like, and is there a distinction between the bucket in the moon or the reflection.
I was just gonna say, and more even, so I'm a person who, when I connect in wrong, it's because I'm trying to fix something, you know, something needs to be fixed, me fix it, right? And so to me, what this koan is about is anything that I think needs to be fixed is the bucket. And anything that I'm reacting before I'm thinking about it, evaluating it, and I'm jumping into it. So another way to think about it, it kind of reverses that out. Fixing me is the bucket.
So one thing this is demonstrating really beautifully is that there isn't one meaning to any of this. And to do it in a group is really useful. Because it opens it up so many possibilities.
Yeah, and like the koan yesterday where the teacher's base gave out and you used the metaphor of his base was
maintain his
shattered.
position,
Yeah, like maybe it's our worldview or our perceptions or the way we think of, and then it shifts, and as it should, as of course it's going to. I'm a very like visual and metaphor person, as you probably understand by now. You know, like it's like cutting the wire off the hay bale, and it all just falls out. Like it's like, and then it becomes nourishment for the cattle, and then it becomes stool that poop that resources and nourishes the ground, that grows the plants, that, you know, it's like all part of the wheel of the Dharma, the cycle of life.
You have your hand up, Becky.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you, Emily, for all of it, and also sharing the story of what happens after, right? Like there's that moment where there is nothing different, and then there's the next day where you have to keep getting water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that felt really moving. To be like, ordinary life keeps going.
That's why I appreciated that second poem of Trudy's too. It's like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
And it continues.
Again.
And your earrings are full moons.
I've got lots of moon things to share with you. All the magic and the yumminess.
It brought up for me a companion poem. It's different, but it's just, I'll throw it in if it's okay.
Please.
You know, you're not gonna go wrong with Rumi. So it's a completely different perspective, a completely different culture. But it just kept coming up, and I thought, oh, we're gonna play with this one too. I mean, just for fun. It's called The Pickaxe. I don't know if you know this one. The first line is, oh, you have to listen. Some commentary on I was a hidden treasure, and I desired to be known. Tear down this house. 100,000 new houses can be built from the transparent yellow carnelian buried beneath it. And the only way to get to that is to do the work of demolishing and then digging up the foundations. With that value in hand, all the new construction will be done without effort. And anyway, sooner or later, this house will fall down on its own. The jewel treasure will be uncovered, but it won't be yours then. The buried wealth is your pay for doing the demolition, the pick and shovel work. If you wait and just let it happen, you'd bite your hand and say, I didn't do as I knew that I should have. This is a rented house. You don't own the deed. You have a lease, and you set up a little shop where you barely make a living sewing patches on torn clothing. Yet only a few feet underneath you are two veins, pure red and bright gold carnelian. Quick, take the pickaxe and pry the foundation. You've got to quit this seamstress work. What does the patch sewing mean, you ask? Eating, drinking. The heavy cloak of the body is always getting torn. You patch it with food and other restless ego satisfactions. Rip up one board from the shop floor and look into the basement. You'll see two glints in the dirt. Interesting.
That's great.
It's a little more aggressive and masculine, you know, there's that kind of stuff in it, but it's kind of interesting.
Very interesting.
We'll send that one to you.
And Trudy's poems too.
Yeah, yeah. Where are you now?
I'm right here.
Yeah, you're doing good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I thought, in the poem, in the story, the fact that Chiyono went out on a full moon night, that's the night the bucket broke. And to me, you know, the reflection of the full moon that was no longer there after the bucket broke, right? But it's as good as it could possibly seem, and still the bucket break. Yeah, so I thought that was, that part was interesting.
Even on a good night, the worst can happen.
Or maybe the best can happen. Maybe the bucket breaking was.
Never know. What looked like something horrible turned out to be liberation.
Anything else stirring or?
I was just thinking the pandemic was like that. The pandemic was disastrous in many ways. And it brought a lot of people together through technology. Brought me to practice. Yeah.
Yeah, I was also thinking that it's not one or the other.
Struck by the chain with the different phases of the moon as it got passed around. At the ways in which one person striving to hold them all, it sort of like felt a little bit extreme, but when two people would hold it, it allowed for sort of this spreading that allowed for all those phases of the moon to be viewed and sort of held between, as you sort of felt significant. Yeah.
Goes on and on.
I know.
Jeanette, you had your hand up again?
I'm
one
caught
second.
on the,
Okay.
There we go.
well, I'm caught on this question of whether it's the best thing or the worst thing, because it can be both at the same time.
Yeah.
Both could be true.
Yeah.
And always true forever, and also always changing.
A lot of the Koans poke around about that. The worst is the best, you know?
And also, is it neutral? Like, is it not even interesting? All those things, you know.
It's similar to the Koan yesterday. It's a stepping past. Is it this way or is it that way? It's stepping beyond.
And isn't that also one more thing that our mind does, to try to label something good or bad versus?
Right. It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. Rising.
So I appreciate the embodiment that you bring to your teaching, not just today, but that you allow emotion and sensory experience, the full human experience, to be part of even the vastness of everything being included. I just appreciate that about you so much, Emily. I always do.
I was thinking, you were talking about starting out in a very kind of self-revealing, just here I am, you know, and I thought, well, what would I say if I was, but as the further you went along, and it's very personal in some ways, one of the things that I have put my whole heart into that meant one of the greatest things to me was developing the Austin Zen Center. It was a small sitting group which grew, and because I trained at San Francisco Zen Center, I created it in that form, and it meant a lot to me. And as it became an actual center, I had it named for my teacher, Blanche Hartman. Her Dharma name was Zenke, so it's Zenkeji. I wanted a temple named for a woman. There were no temples named for women that I knew of. And so we dedicated it. And then people were sent to run the place because I was busy doing my career. And eventually it became a place I could no longer practice. And I had to step away. One of the people who was my dear, dear friend there, Charles Wall, years later, he'd been president of the board and everything else. And we were having lunch and he said, you know, we were so mad when you left and hurt. And he said, but now I realize we left you first. And so there was that. But then later, that's when I met Peg and we developed. So without being liberated from that, I could never teach like I'm teaching now. Because I would have been at Tazahara, you know, and that's wonderful. I'm not saying good or bad. I'm just saying without that, the things that fell apart in a way that was crushing to me. I still have dreams about it. And yet it was liberating. So was it good or was it bad?
Thank you so much for sharing that, because I had trained originally in a particular tradition that didn't quite work for me, Korean Zen tradition. And then I trained with Darlene Koan, and that was, I thought my practice life was over. And I met Darlene, really I felt like I was raised from the dead. And she died. Then I was kind of like wanting to be part of the San Francisco style. And I just never fit in.
Wasn't home.
And about 2 years ago, I received a lay Dharma transmission from Tia Strozer. And I felt like, oh, finally, I get to be me. And then I was not able to teach because I have cancer, I had cancer treatment. Part of it was, though, that I need to trust myself and get my own feet underneath me. So I
take your seat.
Take my seat, right? And to actually do that as a woman, for me, has been such a struggle. So I was so looking forward to coming to this retreat because I knew Appamada was different. So I'm so grateful to hear your story about, yes, a broken bucket, right?
It was the great loss and the great liberation was all the same thing.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. But if we stay committed to the Dharma, it will show us.
Right.
And not get caught by any particular formation. And each one is useful. Each one shaped us.
Yes.
Yeah, there was something Marla said about humility yesterday, and I'm not famous for that, you know. But it's in there, but it's not projected well. But I think it's fascinating because we have this notion that we're not being made, but like we're so small in these causes and conditions, and so we have ideas, and we really think they're real. Like that, well, I'm in charge of the thing, and it's comedic, you know. Like over time, if you don't get your ass handed to you, then something's going wrong, you know. Like it really is.
Hopefully it happens soon and tough.
I know. Oh, it's happened to me so many times that I'm like,
you know, you're kind of a trickster though, son, because you're taking all this stuff you've done, and you're skillful and you're well known. You're building a system in a place where people think they're going to get something.
But see, here's it's experimental.
I call it the Center for Deep Self-Design.
Yeah.
She's for all the young people who want to do stuff and design things, and it's all on computer, all click, you know.
Multi-sensory things.
Yeah, they think, okay, great, but it's all the Dharma.
Totally.
In a different language.
Neat. Yeah, but also I have like total clarity that I have no idea what's going to happen, and I'm not in charge of that at all. all I can do is like, Peg used to say, put your crab puff on the tray and walk around the room with it. And like, let go, because you don't know if they want the crab puff. You don't know if they're allergic to crabs. You don't know if you're even capable of making crab. You know what I mean? And that is how I'm occupying it. It's like, I have no idea how it's gonna go, but I know it's earnest and it's wholehearted. And I've had shit fall apart so much, it doesn't even fucking freak me out anymore. If it didn't fall apart, it would be a miracle. And I'd be grateful for that.
Well, that means it's alive.
Yeah.
It'll keep moving.
Yeah. And I'll just keep trying to be more and more humbled by being made, you know, by being co-created.
Shaped by it.
Mhm. Yeah. And I keep saying, like, don't say that you're humble because you'll get humbled again. So that's why I'm like, I don't want to own that. I will find something, yeah. I'm like, I'm good for now. Just chill right now. Yeah.
You can go ahead, Genevieve.
Thank you. I just wanted to mention that the bucket falling apart is different when you don't have a practice from when you do have a practice. And I was talking with Peg the other day, and so I was telling her about another bucket that exploded, and she was like, well, I find that once people are on the path, these things come when they're ready. And I was like, but I've had devastating things happen when I wasn't ready. And she said, yes, but you weren't on the path then. And it really made me consider like what the experience of a bucket falling apart seems to be if you're not on the path and you don't have a practice, and how different that is if you do have a practice. I don't know if that is.
That's what this story is all about, I think. As she entered practice, and then she began to see the difficulties with the help of the nun and with her own differently. And so what if she actually thought, I'm only okay if the bucket stays together, or if I keep seeing the moon in there, it's like, oh, maybe not.
Exactly, that because then the bucket falls apart and you think it's all over.
Because you
know,
believe.
You just keep staring at the broken pieces of the bucket and you don't even notice the moon.
Right. That's the thing. What about our timing?
We're a little bit ahead. We can shorten zazen.
Okay, good.
I was gonna make just one final comment. One of the I think one of the podcasts I listened to, the part about after months of wholehearted practice, she went out on a full moon night to draw some water from the well, and what the commentary was like, months of wholehearted practice could have been days, it could have been weeks, months, years, decades, and that, you know, I think the term enlightenment suggests that that's like this destination. When I like the word awakening, and like there was a moment that she woke up and understood something in a new way, and then carried on with life. And
like the Koan yesterday, and it took him 30 years to realize. Yeah, you woke up.
Yeah.
And I'll add one more thing, because you said you liked awakening.
Yeah.
So awakening is the dynamic intersection of enlightenment and endarkenment. Enlightenment is not the goal. That's throws the light on what you don't see, but also you have to go into the dark, in the depths of the unknown. And awakening, it has to include both of those sides. The side of the moon that shines and the side that's dark is the whole moon. So I prefer awakening to enlightenment.
I missed what you just said about the moon there. But the thing I've been thinking about is that we always see the same side of the moon. It's always facing us. There's always a dark side, an unknown. And I love that, just the wholeness of that. To me, that's the wholeheartedness, what we know and what we don't know.
I think Floyd liked the dark side of the moon.
Well, then there's not the
a
dark side of the moon.
Yeah.
There's light over there.
That's right.
Yeah.
But it's all from our perspective. That's the thing. We
Right.
believe our perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah. Here we go.
Oh,
I think we're done.
thank you all.
Beautiful.
We do have a after Dharma closing that we have sort of done and then sort of not completed, so we're gonna do it all.
Yeah, so we can hear.
So I have a solo chant, and then you'll need to be, if you wish, on page 5.
She'll open it, and then we do the Bodhisattva power. After she opens it.
And then we'll go into zazen.
Yeah, then we'll reshape ourselves here for Sazen instead before lunch.
Okay, so one bow at the end of the Bodhisattva, and then
Let's stand
resit.
to do it.
Okay.
Rebuild that.
And then resit.
Should we rebuild our
Go back to.
Well, let's close our Dharma talk, and then we'll readjust, and then we'll sit.
Since we're still in the Buddha Hall doing the Dharma talk thing, we're gonna go to the Zen though.
May our intention equally permeate every being in place with the true merit of Buddha's way. Page 5. Beings are numberless, I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible, I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless, I vow to enter them. Buddha's way is unsurpassable, I vow to embody it. Beings are numberless, we vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible, we vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless, we vow to enter them. Buddha's way is unsurpassable, we vow to embody it. Beings are numberless, this vow frees them all. Delusions are inexhaustible, this vow ends them all. Dharma gates are boundless, this vow enters them all. Buddha's way is unsurpassable, this vow embodies it.